Hi, welcome to another one of my videos. Come on in, sit down, grab a drink. I've got my Diet Dr. Pepper right here. And we're going to talk about all the books that I read in November. Now, I'm going to attempt to do this video with my kitty in here with me. He's absolutely determined to have my attention. And if any of you have watched any of my vlog videos, you will know this by now, that whenever I turn the camera on, he thinks he's a star and he has to be the center of it. I got through 12 books in the month of November, you guys. That is insane. 12 books in 1 month for me is an insane amount of books. Some of them were super small. There was also other ones that were really big, like almost close to 900 pages long. I feel like they kind of all balance themselves out in the end. I'm really excited to talk about these books. What an amazing month. It was a roller coaster of ups and downs. We just got to talk about it. So you know what? Make sure you have your drink. I've got mine here. I'm going to take a drink and then we're going to get right into talking about the books. I'm so excited. I knew I wanted to start the month of November with some kind of a fall, you and your tail, with some kind of fall themed Thanksgiving-y type of vibe to just kind of like set my mood. So the first book I read was Falling Like Leaves by Misty Wilson. And I have to say, the cover, just the cover alone of this book just gave me all the feels, all the vibes, very nice setup. However, this ended up being 1.5 stars, you guys. I was so disappointed. And this was kind of like a YA. You have Ellis. She has this dad who sees a future for her. He kind of drives her to be basically, to take after him, to be him. And he's always really hard on her, but she accepts it because he's like one of those absentee fathers who is never really around. And so she strives to be the best that she can, basically try to be him in order to get any attention. She's conflicted because she also loves to sew. She's like an artist in her own way when it comes to sewing and creating all of her own styles. And at one point she thought about going to fashion school, but you know, that's not what her dad had planned for her. And amidst all of this, her mom and her dad both just throw a bombshell on her. Hey, you and I are leaving. Your dad and I need to separate for a while. Things aren't doing so great. We're just going to be gone for a couple months. We're going back to my hometown, Bramble Falls, and we're going to stay with your aunt and your cousin, and you're going to enroll in school there. She ends up going back. This book is basically a whole journey about finding yourself, learning to stop listening to the voices of other people and start listening to your own heart and accepting that they're going to be the way they are and they're not going to change. And you need to live for yourself because you're the one that you have to live with. That was all good and well. Ellis, she definitely had that teenage trying to find oneself scenario. Cooper, however, is the reason why this book is a 1.5 stars. I did not like Cooper at all. Okay, he had a couple redeeming qualities to him, just a couple. 95% of the time, I wanted to beat this guy upside the head. And seriously, ladies, especially you young adults, if Cooper is the kind of guy that you're rooting for the rest of your life, hold out for someone better. Because trust me, this guy isn't it. 2025, Cooper is my least favorite MNC out of every book I've ever read. Like every single time I think of Cooper, I want to set his hair on fire. He would get mad at other things. Like she had a whole journey that she had to go through. She was still young. She was going through a lot. And instead of supporting her, instead of, hey, I'll be here. I hope you don't break my heart again. Like it was just like, nope, can't talk to you no more. Leave me alone. And he would say mean, hurtful things to her. And then she would spend half of the book blaming herself and being hard on herself and down on herself. I'm sorry, ladies, hold out for someone better than Cooper. Now we're going to get into book 2. And I'm going to try to pick this up a little bit because again, I've got 12 books to talk about, but I feel like every single book I read this month, whether it was good or bad, each had a really deep set emotion within me. And the next book I went into, for whatever reason, I wasn't ready to go into a fantasy romance book yet. So I went ahead and I picked up Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver, and I gave this book a 4 stars. It was so good. It was such a good time. I absolutely loved it. You got the MMC, which is Weston Belmont, and then you have the FMC, which is Skylar. Now, Skylar is a singer. She ends up coming to Rose Hill kind of out of the blue. I'm like, she'd planned on it at one point, but she ends up showing up earlier. And their first encounter, like, I knew it, honestly, no, I'm not even going to say what their first encounter was. I just loved how they first met. I felt that it was so different than what you see in a lot of books. Skylar went through a lot of trauma. As she's living next door to Weston and getting to see him interacting with his kids, because this is a single daddy trope, she starts realizing what a family really is, what a family really means. Like Weston and Skylar and his 2 kids, they all kind of heal together. And it's just a beautiful story to see. When he first meets her and stuff, he's kind of trying to play down his fanboyism because he can sense that she's, you know, dealing with things, and he doesn't want to like scare her. He wants to help her heal, you know, and he works with horses. And so he kind of has this concept almost like he's trying to help a skittish horse in a way, right? Not that he thinks that she's a horse, but it's kind of that concept. They had to work through, and you know, that whole love brings you together, love heals you. It played very well in this book, and I absolutely loved it. So moving right along, I was feeling good. I was like, you know what? I've read 2 romantic-y style books. I was like, I'm ready for some fantasy. So the next book I read was Shield of Sparrows, and oh my gosh, I loved this book. God tier. First God tier book in the month of November. I was over the moon excited for this book. I cannot wait for book 2 to come out, which is coming out next year. And you better believe it, I have it on my calendar. I cannot wait. I ate this book up. Now, I was a bit nervous because I have watched reviews that other booktubers have spoke of this book, and a lot of people were talking about how they were disappointed in it, that they were expecting more than what they got. Other people were saying, you know, it was an okay book, but you know, it would make a better movie or a TV show than it did a book. And you know what, to each of their own. Me personally, absolutely loved this book. I predicted certain things, and I'm not going to say what those things are because it would give a major spoiler for those who haven't read Shield of Sparrows yet. My gosh, it did not take away from anything. Honestly, having known what I knew, even from the beginning, it just made everything that happened, every interaction, just everything that was done, it's just made it all the more bittersweet. Oh, I cannot wait for book 2. It definitely ended in a cliffhanger that I absolutely have to know what happens. Now, you have these different kingdoms, and in order to make peace with everybody, every so many generations or something like that, a nation will pick a sparrow, and that woman is set to marry someone from another kingdom to kind of keep their kingdoms unified and keep them in peace. You got these 2 princesses, Odessa and her sister is supposed to be the sparrow. She has been training for it. She's been a sword fighter, anything you can think of. Like, she's like really strong, really powerful, right? And she's been training her whole life to be the sparrow. And then you've got Odessa, who, even though she's the oldest, she's kind of clumsy and she doesn't have any sword skills. Instead of her sister being chosen as the sparrow, she ends up having to marry Prince Xavier. She ends up becoming the sparrow, and then ends up having to go to this other kingdom. Is completely different than anything she's ever known. She's never left her castle. She's in this other kingdom, and they're in the wilds, and it's in this other kingdom where it's dangerous and people are dying and monsters are attacking you, and she's having to learn to survive, and she's having to learn to get stronger. She realizes that in order to survive, she needs to learn how to fight. And this whole time she's trying to get to know this Prince Xavier, trying to get her to know her husband. And you've also got this other guy who's called the Guardian, and he's got all of these powers, and he's really strong, and everybody hates him in other kingdoms because he's so strong and so powerful. Is determined to train her to fight so that she can survive, and he's just so mean to her in the beginning. I don't want to say much beyond that, but you guys, I love Odessa. Oh my gosh, I really do, and I cannot wait to find out what happens with her. But Shield of Sparrows, God tier book. God tier book, yes. I did not want it to end. I wanted it to just keep going and never end. And yeah. After finishing Shield of Sparrows, I was a little concerned if I was going to be able to really get into any book, because Shield of Sparrows had its hooks in me so deeply. I was a bit concerned, but I was like, you know what? No, we're going to do this. We're going to go with this. And so then I picked up the Cinnamon Bun Bookstore. This was book 2 in the Dream Harbor series, and this was a good book. This was a 4-star read for me. Now, I don't know how to describe it. It was a very sweet book. I was very invested in Hazel and Noah, and I loved the dynamic between them. She's getting ready to hit 30 years old, and she is starting to realize that she hasn't done much with her life and she wants to actually live. And then you've got Noah, who, is younger than her, and he kind of helps her live some of her life. And in the meantime, they kind of fall in love, although Noah was in love with her even before. He was the first to fall. He was in love with her from the beginning of the book. Watching the two of them just grow together, you had to feel for Noah, because again, his own things, his own life, he was very different than his family, and he had to accept who he was so that he could realize that everybody else that loved him already had accepted him. And then Hazel, she's this head in the clouds or head in a book sort of person who doesn't necessarily understand the emotions of those around her. So she was always like the last one to know. They were kind of almost like polar opposites, but yet they were drawn together. And it was a very sweet book, and I really can't say much beyond that. It was just, it was a really, really good book. Now, after a God tier book and a 4-star read, I was really in my zone. And so then I decided that I was going to read Stuffed by Jessica Gadziala. I'm sorry, I'm messing that up. And it's a Thanksgiving romance. Now, this book, 1 star, guys. This book was a 1 star. I almost wish I could give it 0 stars. This book, there was a lot of stuffing going around, you guys, and it wasn't a turkey. You want a spicy book with absolutely no plot, no nothing whatsoever, this is the book for you. I mean, who needs character development? Who needs anything? Let's just get together. The only thing that made this book make a little bit of sense is because Callie and Adam had known each other since they were little. So Adam was her older brother's best friend, and he didn't have parents, so he hung out at their place all the time. And so Adam was her childhood crush. Come to find out, he felt the same way, but because she was so young, he waited, and then eventually life just happened. She moved away, and it was just never the right time for them. So she comes home for Thanksgiving. Spice after that. Didn't like nothing but spice and spice and spice. I mean, they did do a little, they went and they picked apples. And then spice. And yeah, that's all I can really say about this book. It was spice, you guys. That was it. Anyways, moving on from that one. I thought, okay, you know what? Maybe it was just that one. Okay, let's move on to another fall Thanksgiving-y type book. And I found this book at Walmart. I was drawn in by the cover, and I was like, yes, let's do it. And so I picked Kindling by Bonnie Woods. And 2 star, guys. This was a 2 star. I got so annoyed with this book. Yeah, I don't even know how to really describe this book. I didn't feel the chemistry between Frasier and Harper, at all. So you have Harper, who, her and her girlfriend broke up with each other. I guess Harper's ex-girlfriend was really mean and controlling in the relationship. So her ex-girlfriend always made her sound like that she was this boring person who never did anything. So she decides, screw that. I'm gonna rent a cabin in the middle of nowhere, and I am going to spend 3 months writing a book. When she gets to her location, come to find out, the place that she was supposed to stay in had sprung a water leak and was not going to be livable for the foreseeable future. And instead of the guy getting in a car with her and taking her to another place to stay, he's just like, oh yeah, by the way, sayonara, I gotta stay here. You're gonna have to walk through the woods by yourself. Hopefully you don't get lost or eaten by a wolf. Like, seriously? I mean, this is a business guy who owns other cabins and things, and why do you do that? Like, he never even bothered to call her to tell her that the leak happened. Like, he's just like, sorry, nothing I can do about it. You're just going to have to walk back through the woods. Because she'd already walked through the woods to get to this place. And so then she's walking through the woods again. And so she just happens to run across a cabin where she meets Frasier. And of course, Frasier feels bad for this woman because she has nowhere to go. So he allows her to stay in his cabin. And it's not like his cabin, like where he lives. He has a house in town, but his cabin is kind of like his his workplace. And so, you know, the water's obviously cold and there's not a lot of food or anything in the cabin because he doesn't live there. But he helps her kind of fix it up a little bit in order for her to be able to stay there. And then for the one night. And then he takes her to town, and just for the inn that's in the town to be completely shut down for renovations. And there's literally nowhere that this poor girl can stay. And she doesn't want to leave. She doesn't want to call it quits because she's trying really hard to pick herself up after her breakup. Frasier agrees to allow her to stay in his cabin, and she's going to pay him money, which the town desperately needs. And he's kind of taking care of his mom and his sister and his sister's kids. He needs the money, and so he agrees to let her stay in the cabin, and then a whole romance ensues. I mean, to each their own. If you like this book, that's great. I'm not saying that Harper or Frasier were bad characters. And, you know, there was definitely chemistry between them, and I could see it. So I gave it a 2-star. I found myself bored. I found myself reading this book and then just kind of spacing out. Just like nothing was really going on in this book. And it was kind of like a snooze fest, to be honest. So, I mean, they had its moments. It had some uniqueness to it, which is why I ended up with a 2-star. But I was bored, guys. I was bored. By this point, I wanted to give up on books. I read 2 books, a 1-star, a 2-star, back to back. I was just like, oh my gosh, I don't even know if I want to. The next book I picked up was Flameborn Chosen by Amy Lynn and God tier. And you know what? I want to know why this book isn't being talked about more. Like, for people who absolutely love Fourth Wing, like, why is this book not being talked about more? I mean, it's really freaking good, you guys. And she's a dragon rider. I mean, hello. She falls for a dragon rider. This is everything, in my opinion, that Fourth Wing should have been. And on top of that, this book has become my favorite book out of every book I've read in 2025. Top. So you've got Bren, who is a lowborn woman. She's had a rough life. She falls in love with this guy. She thinks that he loves her too. She gives her virginity to him. He ends up becoming chosen by a dragon, becomes a dragon rider, joins the knights. And when he does, he pretty much just tosses her off to the side, doesn't care about her. And so she decides that she's going to sneak out of her house, and she's going to run to him and basically say goodbye to him because he has to leave to go on this like important mission, just to see him with another woman. A whole fight ensues, and he tells her to pretty much that he never cared about her, never loved her. She was gullible. She was stupid. They just used her. And then he was just discarding her like trash and kicking her out, right? Like, he's like, get out of here. I never want to see you again. Really mean, almost violent with her to get her to leave. And by that point, she's lost all hope in everything. Her dad hates her. Like, she's ruined, right? And in this world, to be a woman, the only thing you were good for was to get married. But because she's ruined herself, her dad's like, no guy's ever gonna want you. She feels like she has nothing to live for anymore. She doesn't want to go back home. And so she climbs this mountain and decides that she's going to throw herself off the cliff. She's going to kill herself. And as she's falling, she gets saved by a dragon, and this dragon chooses her. And she ends up becoming the first female dragon rider that their histories have ever known. And so this whole first book is like her journey into finding herself. She's been beaten down, you guys. She's raw. She is afraid of her own shadow. And she's having to learn to live with all of these knights, all these male knights, with her being the only female. And then you've got the general who is determined to help her, to protect her. You know, he believes that the dragons don't make mistakes. And if a dragon chose her, then there's something about her that is, you know, is worth it. And so he goes out of his way to try to change things around the base to accommodate a female rider, and he's defending her, and he's training her in secret to kind of help her, because she has these trials that her and her dragon have to pass in order to become full-fledged knights. You know, and just like with Violet in Fourth Wing, Bren has her own struggles that she has to deal with because she's a girl. She's living on a base full of men, right? They do all of these things differently with their dragons. They've got all of this heavier equipment, all of these things that they can do easily that she can't do. She doesn't have the strength and the muscle to be able to do what all of these guys are doing. So she has to learn other ways to do things. She changes the equipment that her dragon wears so that she can be able to get the equipment on the dragon herself and to be able to ride her dragon herself. And so, you know, it's all about learning how to do things her way. And in that, Bren reminds me a lot of Violet. And it's all about accepting who you are for and where you're at, and then learning to adjust to make it to where you can survive in the situation that you find yourself in. And she is finding her strength. And what I love about Bren is she's not one of those FMCs that you normally see in a book that has a horrible background and then just wakes up one day and is just magically strong and tough and I can deal with everything. No, this is real life. Okay, this is real life trauma and what people in real life have to deal with. It's not as simple as some people make it out to be. When you have trauma, you don't just wake up in the morning and you're just 100% let's go. I'm a badass. I can take on anything. No, it is rough. It is hard. Sometimes getting out of bed is hard. Like when she gets surrounded by guys who are like cheering her on and she just closes in on herself, afraid. You feel it. And so with this book, you're definitely going to want to check your trigger warnings because this touches on a lot of hard stuff. It's definitely not going to be a book for everyone because it touches so deeply on traumas and dealing with traumas and how hard it is to do daily things in your life when you have suffered so much heartbreak and so much hurt and so much damage. It was raw and it was beautiful. I cried a lot. I loved it. I already picked up book 2 and I can't wait to read that because you guys, incredible God tier book. It's so worth it. So worth it. So the next, I went back out of fantasy, went back into a Thanksgiving-y fall sort of book, and I picked up Pumpkin Spice Meltdown by Kate Minty. So you got this girl, Natalie, who has a boyfriend that they've mostly been dating like off and on for like 5 or 6 years, and he lives far away from where she lives at, but every once in a while he would come and visit her, and they would hang out together, and then he would leave. Well, one time he comes and they get drunk, and he mentions something about how they should get married and live together, and she's like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, let's do that. And so she takes that as hey, we're engaged now. So then she goes through this whole process of finding work in his hometown, goes through all this trouble of selling her car because she's not going to need her car. She's going to, she found a new thing she was going to do. She sells off most of her stuff, throws other stuff in storage, and then she hops on a plane and she moves all the way to this guy's hometown. And as she's touching down on the airplane, he sends her a text. Hey, I didn't know how to tell you this, but I'm married. We can't be together. This idiot decides to not only cheat on his wife, hurt her, lead her on for years, and then gets her to sell off all of her stuff, quit her job, leave her home and everything, and has man, couldn't he have done that months ago? Like before she had done anything? Like literally she's in the airport waiting for him, and he's like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm married, we can't be together. Luckily, her great aunt, who happens to be someone she's very, very close with, lives in this town in a nursing home. And so she ends up going and sleeping on her aunt's couch, piece her life together. Luckily, she was able to find a job before she moved, so at least she's gonna have work, but she's only got so much money. Comes the MMC Brian. It just so happens that her great aunt has a best friend whose grandson, Brian, owns, like he buys places and he constructs them and changes them. And he just bought this like giant warehouse type thing that used to be like a big old bar. He is renovating it and he's going to be changing a bunch of it into apartments. So he gets bullied by his grandma to work really, really hard to get one of those apartments set up right away so that she can have a place to live. And he warns her, he's like, you're going to be living in a construction zone. And she's like, I don't care about that. I can't live on my great aunt's couch forever. And he's like, okay, fine. So then he works really hard to get that taken care of for her. And while all this is going down, she's also being tasked to do Thanksgiving dinner gathering for her entire family. Now, apparently in her family, the Thanksgiving dinners have always been a humongous deal, but her parents sold their home and decided to live on the road. So they got one of those van conversions. They're tasking everybody else to kind of take turns being the hosts for Thanksgiving for the families. And she gets the very first year. And with the rest of her life falling apart and all of this horrible stuff that happened, she's determined that she's not going to give up her Thanksgiving, that she's gonna do it. And her sister-in-law is willing to take it, but her and her sister-in-law don't get along. And she's not gonna give it to her sister-in-law, especially not for the very first Thanksgiving rotation. So she's determined to do this while everything's falling apart around her. She's trying to get everything together. And then her and Brian keep getting thrown together and he ends up helping her out a lot. And it was a very cute book. I gave this book a 4-star. I thought it was very sweet. I absolutely loved Brian. He was a sweet at heart. Now he should have been like what Cooper was, okay? He was there for her. He was very supportive. I mean, he went out of his way even when it was inconvenient for him. And, you know, he had his own relationship trauma too. And so they kind of shared this kind of heartbreak, so to speak, and they kind of heal each other. You know, the end of it didn't necessarily end the way I was expecting it to, but that's perfectly okay. I actually liked it better than the way I thought my brain was going to take it. Then I was ready for my next book. When I ordered it on Amazon, let's just say I ordered it. I already read book 1. Book 1 was a God tier book. When I ordered it, I didn't check how many pages this book was. I just ordered it and I knew I wanted to read it and I knew I wasn't going to be able to wait. Like I had to read it the second that it came in the mail. And that is The Throne of Broken Gods by Amber Nicole. And this is book 2 in the Gods and Monsters series. And you guys, look at this. This one's a thick boy. Thick book. I mean, I remember opening it and I looked at my husband and I was like, it's a weapon. Like you can knock somebody out and run for your life with this book. I mean, it is heavy. And let's see, let's see exactly how many pages this book is. 761 pages. I mean, this book is thick. And I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done to myself? I'm like, well, this is probably going to be the last book that I'm going to get through in November. This book did not disappoint. It was very, very, very good. So you've got Diana and Sam Keel. Those are and I think I'm saying Sam Keel's name right. If I'm not, I'm so sorry. Diana is kind of this person who made a deal with powerful being in order to save her sister, and so they kind of become immortals, and she did a lot of bad things for this powerful guy in order to keep her sister safe. Things kind of go crazy. A god gets awoken, comes to earth, that's Sam Keel, and they end up working together to try to find this book, because the Book of Azrael was book 1 in the Gods and Monsters series. And then it becomes a race to find this book. Now, that is basically the premise of book 1. I am not going to say anything about book 2. I can't. It's book 2 in the series. And a whole heck of a lot goes on in this book. And anything I say about this book is going to give a bunch of spoilers away in book 1 for those who haven't read the Gods and Monsters series yet. Just take my word for it. This book is really good. It's going to wreck you. You're going to cry, but you're going to love every second of it. And I can't wait to pick up book 3. Oh man, this is a journey that I have to ride to the end, because I have to know what happens. And with the way book 2 ended, it ended in just as much of a pow as book 1. I didn't think it was going to be able to top it, but oh my gosh, it totally did. This was another God tier book for me. So far, this series is proving to be a God tier series. And all I can say is if you haven't read the Gods and Monsters series, I haven't even finished it yet, but I can already tell you guys you're going to want to read it. It's incredible, but just go in knowing that these are thick. This book is thicker than the Book of Azrael was. So, but yeah, just go in knowing that these are thick books. Next, I went with Fall I Want by Lyra Parrish. And this wasn't a bad book. I ended up giving this a 3-star. This definitely has a lot of like magic in the system. She works at a cafe and this billionaire walks in and it's just chemistry and love at first sight. He is afraid because he's been hurt, and so he kind of pushes her away. He's like mean to her at first, and then they kind of get over that, and he's like, hey, you know, I want to be your friend. And she's like, okay, I want to be your friend. But then it turns into like fake dating, but then not really fake dating, because the only people they were fooling were themselves, and even then they weren't really fooling themselves. It sounds very confusing, but you know, as long as you hang on for the ride, it makes sense. This was definitely a fall in love fast book. I felt like I was pushed on a roller coaster and I was just whirly looping through the entire thing. I mean, it had its funny moments. I loved the characters. And again, I could see the two of them together, especially considering, and even as fast as it was, how fast it got together, it kind of makes sense because, you know, you've got like fate and the cosmos and magic and all this stuff that's like putting them together, right? Like soulmates sort of scenario. It was like Autumn knew Zane even before they met. Zane knew Autumn before they even met. And it was just, they were just meant to be. They knew it, and end of story. That's just, you know, that's just what it was. I don't know. There's a part also about this book that bugged me. She was a runner, but the math didn't make sense because she must be a very slow runner, because she's talking about how there's this hill and it's like a mile up and a mile back, which is like, it's like 2 miles. So as she's running up it, she gets to the top, and it's like an hour and a half has went by. I'm like, okay, this is a girl who does a lot of running and it took her an hour and a half to run a mile. I can run that in 9 minutes. It took you an hour and a half. Like, okay, I get it. There was a hill, but even with a hill, it shouldn't have taken an hour and a half for her to run a mile. So something about that part wasn't making sense. And I don't know, maybe it's because I'm training for a marathon, but there's just something about it that just bugged me. And it was like one of those stupid things that I couldn't get out of my head and I couldn't let go of. And even I was realizing that it was a stupid thing to hold on to. And I was just like, okay, whatever. Moving on. And then you know it, because it's November, Brimstone by Callie Hart. Yes, I could not wait to get into this book. I was so excited because Quicksilver was book 1. And you guys, I think that was my first God tier book of 2025. I absolutely loved it. And I couldn't wait to get back into Cyrus and Kingfisher. And this book did not disappoint. I will tell you guys, though, realistically, this book did take me a while to get through, because there was this part of me, it's not that I was bored or anything, it's just there was a part of me that didn't want to finish this book. I was really taking my time with it. I knew that it was going to kind of wreck me at the end, which it did as bad as I was expecting it to. Definitely a cliffhanger that had me going, what? Now I have to wait a whole year before I get to find out what happens next? No. And so I knew that was going to happen. I knew this was the newest book in the series and that the next one is going to take a whole year before we get to find out what happens. Knowing all of that, I'm like, have you guys ever read a book that you absolutely love? You want to find out what happens, but at the same time, you're afraid to move on because when it ends, it's over and you won't get to know anything again until a year. And that's kind of like, that's the best way that I can describe it. It was definitely a God tier book. I absolutely loved it. The book didn't go anywhere even close to where I was expecting it to go after book 1. Like, my mind is blown. Again, I'm very good at predicting books, but this one just completely left field. I totally cried. I love the cover and I love the pages, but look, like, there's that. And I believe this might be Carson, I think. Because it's not Kingfisher. And then you've got Onyx on the back. Absolutely loved it. That's really pretty. A few things that I have to say. They fixed the writing. I feel like the author really took the critiques and the things that people were saying about Quicksilver and they fixed it. The writing was beautiful. I didn't see any typos. Like, it was very well written, and I'm very proud of that. My only downside is, and this might be kind of okay, I don't want to tell you guys because it's going to give it away, but she took one critique and she changed something very important, and I feel like that wasn't a necessary thing to do. Like, I think she should just stick with a certain thing because that's what she wanted it to be, and who cares what people think of it. But that's my only personal opinion. And again, I don't really want to say anything because it could give spoilers away, and I don't want to do that. But yeah, God Tier book, really good. If you guys haven't gotten around to reading it yet, you really, really should, because it was fantastic. And living in complete and utter sadness, knowing that I have to wait so long to read book 3 now. I'm going to cry. I can't believe I have to wait. I don't want to wait, especially after how this book ended. Oh, Kingfisher. But guys, the way these two love each other, it's like stop your heart. Like, it's so romantic, and it's so, it's like everything a romantasy should be, and then some. And then the last book I got through in November was The Fine Art of Faking It by Lucy Score. It took me forever. This book didn't actually come out. I didn't get it in my hands until the 28th of November, and I literally finished it. I think it was like 11:30 at night on November 30th when I finished it, so I barely got it under the wire. But yeah, this is part of the Blue Moon series, and it was a really good book. This one is about Eden Moody, who owns an inn, and Davis Gates, who owns a winery, and their family have been feuding for a really long time, and they don't even remember how the feud started. They just know they're supposed to be feuding, and they do really dumb, stupid things to each other throughout the years. And so you kind of get this whole Romeo and Juliet vibe between the two of these, because their families do not want them getting together under any circumstances. But then you've got the Beautification Bureau, who wants them to get together, right? And you have to wonder, did they want them to get together because these two really belong together, or did they really want to get them together because they were just tired of the families feuding and they were hoping that this would end the feud? I don't really know. The Beautification Bureau was like top notch in this book, though. They did some things that were like, I couldn't believe it. I could say I hope that they learn from this experience and get better, but somehow, knowing the Beautification Bureau the way that I do, they're totally not. I gave this book a 4-star because it was definitely very good. I love the Blue Moon series, and I love everybody in the series. Now, here's a few things that I have to say. Davis Gates, for example, supposedly Cordona from the last book was his best friend. But yet, when we were in Cordona's story, Davis Gates was never mentioned. Never mentioned. Cordona would talk about his high school days and stuff, but it was always with him and the Pierce brothers. But he never mentions Davis, this guy who was his best friend in high school, that they did everything together. Just like Davis who, right? It's like Davis just came out of the woodwork. Apparently, he went to high school and junior high and grew up with all of these people, but he was never, ever, ever mentioned. At least Eden was kind of mentioned in the last book because her and Eva kind of became fast friends. You kind of got this hint that Eden had lived in Blue Moon her whole life, but even then, she apparently is playing a bigger role than what was mentioned in any of the other books. Like, suddenly you've got these two big key people who've been a huge part of Blue Moon that nobody's ever heard of. And it's just like, okay, that's a bit weird, but okay, we'll go with it. Also, I've been reading one of these books every single month, so this is probably part of this is just like a me problem. I swear they have to stop and mention every single person like over and over and over. This is Carter Pierce, and this is his wife Summer, and this is how they met, and this and this and this, and then it moves to the next Pierce and the next Pierce, and then it moves to Frank and Phoebe, and I was like, I know all of this stuff. Okay, and again, people were probably watching this, and people are probably reading these books like in between publications. They weren't reading them one every single month. So okay, Again, that's probably just a me problem, but I have been finding myself getting a little bit of bored with the explanations of the characters because I already know the characters and I don't need to know this information yet again. I literally just lived it last month. And so again, with that being a me problem, I just let it go. I was like, move on, let it go. No poisoning and death happened in this Romeo and Juliet story. So it's safe. It's safe, guys. I promise. Woo! There ends all 12 books that I read in the month of November, and wow, that was incredible. I am really impressed. I think I read the most books in November than I did any other month. I definitely am not going to make that mark in December. I did read a lot and I feel like I burnt myself out a little bit. It's already the 3rd of December and I haven't read a book yet. I feel like I was just like in the reading zone. I wasn't forcing myself. I was just having so much fun reading. But now that I've come up for air, I'm like, yeah, I'm doing some other things. Like, you know, I've been doing a lot of Christmas decorating. Like we go all out in this house. So I've been getting a lot of that stuff done. I will not be doing another one of these videos in the month of 2025. The next time I talk to you guys about the books that I have read, it will be in 2026. What? I know I've said this in a couple of my other videos, but I am just amazed how fast this year has went by. I kind of feel like this summer was kind of long for me and I couldn't wait for it to be over just because I've been training for a marathon and the heat has just been destroying me. I hate running in the heat and I'd rather run in the cold. So I feel like the heat lasted forever. So in a way I feel like summer dragged, but aside from that, overall, it just feels like it went by so fast. I hope you guys, if you guys are new, I hope you guys stick around. I have a lot of big things coming for my channel next year that I'm really, really excited about. I will be talking to you guys about some of those in some upcoming videos. I will see you guys in my next video. I hope everybody has a fantastic rest of their week. Bye.